Hi everyone and welcome to Hit the Apex. This week it's the post-Bathurst hangover edition. Every edition seems to be a hangover edition when we have a big weekend, but it wasn't big in that sense. We didn't go through a slab or anything like we normally do, but yeah, it's the post-Bathurst 1000 edition. There was something on the side called the Japanese Grand Prix as well, which we'll talk about straight away just so we can get it out of the way and rip straight into Bathurst, which was the epic race that we did expect and lots of drama and whatnot, and yeah, deserved winners, and I guess part of the Bathurst folklore already, those guys. So yeah, let's get straight into it today, Baden. And Japanese Grand Prix, let's might as well get through it as quickly as we can. It was another Mercedes AMG masterclass in Suzuka. Hamilton within one win now of a fifth World Championship. And, you know, given that we started the season thinking that, oh yeah, this could go down to the wire, we're sitting here with 4 races in hand, and yeah, with 3 remaining after next time in Austin, the championship could already be won.
Yeah, about that. Pretty hard to even consider any kind of viewing from this point. It just feels like it's worthless going through the motions, and Ferrari's spirit just seems like it's been snuffed out. They didn't even show a fight on the weekend and started with Saturday. That qualifying blunder epitomises the way things have transpired really since the second half of the season commenced.
Yeah, and for Mercedes, a dominant victory despite a couple of concerns that they had from the pit wall. Ultimately, it didn't matter in the end because they still finished quite a fair margin up the road. Valtteri Bottas P2 again, doing the job as he said post-race. So, yeah, he finished 10 seconds behind Hamilton. But, yeah, 4th consecutive win for Hamilton sees a 67-point lead in the championship now. So, basically, if Vettel finishes lower than 3rd in Austin, Hamilton wins another race. And remember, he's undefeated in Austin all but 1 year in 2013. The championship will be his. So, and as you said, difficult weekend Ferrari, title hopes all but gone. The qualifying stuff up was where it all started, I guess, where they decided to send them out on intermediate tyres, even though everyone else was on the super softs during the start of Q3. That pretty much compromised their chances of actually setting a competitive lap. And then Vettel himself had a spin, so I guess just not being able to recover from that and having to start P9 as well. Not a very good qualifying position for him, especially considering he has a championship on the line. Then the start of the race, he made a great start, made up a few positions, but got himself tangled with Max Verstappen at the Spoon corner, whether that was a bit of a contentious one because not everyone thinks that Max was at fault, that it was Seb. He was just trying to find a gap where there wasn't a gap and everything, but Max coming out of a little tangle with Kimi on the earlier lap, I guess, which he got a 5-second penalty for. It wasn't good for Max's race either, but yeah, for Seb, he ended up at the back of the field after that and had to recover back to 6th, which was the best he could do on the day.
Vettel again, seems as though 9 times out of 10 this season, when it's been on the line, he's taken the inferior option, and it's really bitten him once too often, or really several times too often at this point. There is no point of return, whereas Hamilton just very calculated, and he's just showed over the course of this season, and probably last as well, that he's been able to mature into that role where he'll sit back and let it play out, and Vettel takes the bait so often, and you see these consequences. It's just at a stage now where you can't trust the German to be able to look at that longer picture again, and almost every weekend at this stage he's doing something which is an unforced error.
Yeah, unforced error. So they go from having the best car on the grid to now not having the best car on the grid, but then when they did have that car, they still made all these errors, and it just reeked of desperation almost, that move on Verstappen. Now, you know, during the race commentary as well, they said, oh, well, you know, it was just completely unnecessary given that Verstappen already had a 5-second penalty which he had to serve in his pit stop. So Seb would have automatically had that position if he had not tried to go for it. So that would basically cost him a podium. There's no denying it. And then Verstappen ended up finishing 3rd despite having that penalty because Seb went to the back of the field. Kimi was nowhere in the race either. So it's just, another year given where we started, and it's just hard not to be pretty disappointed with, not pretty, but just very disappointed with the way that they've come out. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, just a holistic view on the whole season so far for them. But yeah, I reckon, forget about Ferrari now going into the future, ever challenging Mercedes. Mercedes just done a great job, as they have all year, for the last 4 years as well. They've had probably their toughest year, arguably, yet they've still got the job done.
Testament to Mercedes yet again. On this occasion, they were legitimately looking like they had surrendered that top dog status in the midpoint of the season, yet their resilience to back themselves, bring those upgrades, and you'd say back Hamilton. He's had a bit of help from Bottas, so he should be given credit where it is due, but they've really come through the other side, and like last season, unlike those first 3 years when it was never in question, at this point it really does beg the question whether they'll be challenged legitimately over the course of a season. We've seen it in patches, but never throughout the full 2021 races. Until 2021 at this stage, you have to think that Mercedes, it's going to be a stretch to see them beaten for the title.
Oh, definitely, and we can talk at end about that at the end of the season anyway. But important to point out too that for the second consecutive race, that Red Bull have been stronger than Ferrari as well. So Red Bull finished 3rd and 4th, Verstappen on the podium, of course. Daniel Ricciardo had that excellent run in the race from P15 to 4. It was disappointing again that he had reliability problems in qualifying, and we saw his audible frustration. I guess he said he blew out his vocals when he was walking down pit lane, and it's just, I guess, sums up the season he's had post winning the Monaco Grand Prix, not been on the podium. But had he not had qualified that low, a podium could have been on the cards here for them this weekend. It's Suzuka. He's been on the podium before, so I guess for 4th, and crucially ahead of both Ferrari cars, I guess it's a strong race for Red Bull.
Just a bit of a shot of vitality for Ricciardo. You could see it's a very rare sight, the way he was post qualifying on the Saturday, and that grin and return the next day, and you do hope that if he has had the last share of that misfortune, that somewhere like a Mexico, they might have a chance of getting themselves at least a podium and something just to work with momentum-wise. Again, both parties, we discuss every week at this point, but that'll be hoping just to get to the end of the year and start afresh.
Well, it seems like they might have the ascendancy over Ferrari now, which you wouldn't have thought about a few races ago, wouldn't you? So yeah, definitely somewhere like Mexico, they're a chance to win the race ahead of both Ferrari and Mercedes. But going back to Max, so yeah, messy race for him early on, and I guess the Vettel thing, there was no penalty for that, and I guess it was understandable. Vettel was sort of going for a gap that didn't really exist and whatnot, and he really didn't have to risk that because of Max's 5-second penalty with Kimi. But yeah, the Kimi hit was blatantly obvious, and he didn't need to do that, did Max. And yeah, Kimi ended up suffering as a result of it too, so hence the 5-second penalty. Kind of surprised that there wasn't a more harsher penalty dished out, but still, to come back, finish 3rd. He almost had a chance on Bottas as well, if it wasn't for that lockup he had right at the end of the race. And Bottas, I guess, dropped far behind Hamilton at the end. 10 seconds was the deficit, and then Max had the chance, but then he had that lockup, and Bottas as well. I guess it's just really, it's kind of depressing to hear him after the races now when he's on the podium doing the podium interview that he's just doing his job. I just did my job out there today. It's just like, well, finishing on the podium. I mean, the podiums are getting a lot more and more. Russia was probably the worst podium I've seen in ages, where everyone just seemed so miserable. And then, again, Bottas miserable on the podium here in Japan. So, yeah, basically his, his figure is pretty much destroyed at the moment this year, and pretty might as well write the rest of the season off and start afresh next.
If you're like me, the last few races tuned out the second the checkered flags come out. It's not even worth hanging about for some of those reactions, the way they're ambushed, particularly out of the the car. It's lost that charm, I guess, where they can gather their thoughts. And then when you know the narrative, particularly with Bottas, he's just quite disgruntled, and again, wouldn't be a surprise if he's given that token victory at Abu Dhabi for what it counts, but he knows that he was capable of so much more. But just the way things eventuated, when he had those opportunities, they didn't present themselves to him, and now he's been typecast. You can only hope that he's given every opportunity to start alongside Hamilton next year with equal opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. And the way you say that he's been typecast, it's almost like, the public and the media have willed him into this situation. When he came to Mercedes last year, they all along wanted him in this position where he was the number 2 and he was the wingman or whatever. And despite all his efforts to try and not end up in that position, it's almost like that they've willed him into it and leaving giving him no chance essentially. And even from a team perspective, I think Mercedes would have still easily wrapped up the title with Hamilton, even if Bottas won a couple of races this year. If it wasn't for, I guess, the bad luck that he had at the start of the year, Bottas could have been in title contention himself. But yeah, in the latter part of the season where he was far behind Hamilton in the points, a win at Hungary or as we saw in Russia, might as well have given it to him.
Case can easily be argued that he's driving better this season with 0 victories, and last year he ends up with the 3 of them, and it's just been those moments. He's always been the one to suffer, where Hamilton, of course, he does escape those situations just from a clear head, but Bottas has done so little wrong this year to have ended up with such heartbreak and just being marginalised in favour of anyone else. You do have to wonder when he'll get an opportunity to show what he's capable of, because over the basis of those 2 almost complete seasons at this stage, you have to say he's exceeded the expectations, at least internally, on what they were hoping when he came in and was just a piecemeal number 2.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it's always going to be overshadowed by having that teammate in Lewis Hamilton. And then even if Bottas isn't a title contender, at least he's still scoring those points, and he's, he's reliable, he's consistent, he's everything that a race-winning driver should be. But, this is the script that was written for him, unfortunately, since he joined Mercedes, and the media and the public are just enjoying it. It's what they wanted, and it's how he's been typecast. So that's unfortunately the case. And yeah, even that in its own, you talk about just seeing Ferrari's title tilt drop off. Even the whole Bottas thing is a bit disheartening as a viewer to watch these days. As good as a job as Hamilton's doing, let's not take anything away from him. And a 5th world championship is unprecedented, and he is totally one of the best drivers of all time. But, when you look at the other guys around him, it just almost seems like there's no competition when it's manufactured in that way. And, next year I hope to see Bottas a lot more in contention and not having these issues that he had at the start of the year, which have taken him out of title contention. Just
that feeling of hollowness that, not that it's artificial to what Hamilton has achieved, but if Ferrari can't take the heat up, unlike Rosberg did, then Bottas can have some semblance of a challenge that he can pose to Hamilton, and we get something along the lines of what we saw in those initial years with an internal fight, and that would be great, rather than having one driver locked into the crown with 3 or 4 races remaining. Yeah, but
Mercedes don't want to see that again. They dealt with it in those 3 years between Hamilton and Rosberg, and they don't want to do it again. And
they don't, but from our perspective, we'll take that if no one else can
obviously we would, but yeah, they internally don't want to risk that sort of thing again. And I think that's just kind of, as much as it's a team sport and everything, and the Constructors' Championship matters too, it does take away from the spectacle then. And, that's why, when you look at MotoGP and the teammate rivalries there is a lot more intense, because they're almost like, okay, they're riding the same bike, they're wearing the same colours, but it's almost divided into two separate factions within the team, and each man is for himself. They've got their own engineers, they've got their own, crews basically working. So if that could be adopted into Formula One somehow, that would be great. And yeah, if it was Hamilton versus Bottas next year, if Ferrari can't challenge, I'd totally take that over one man just dominating the championship, So, like we saw in 2016, yeah, everyone complained because it was a Mercedes ball fest, but I totally enjoyed it because it was two Mercedes drivers fighting each other. There was a lot of tension externally and internally, and it gave us a good championship that went down to the wire, and in the end, the better driver over the whole year won. So, if we could have that again, that would be great.
It all comes back to Mercedes as testament to what they've been able to withstand, and that case that we probably made last year over the changed regulations, and now that's been sustained, and who knows with the latest overhaul for next season, and that goes through God knows how much longer, another 2 years, and beyond that's another question. But at this stage, you have to look at them objectively as one of the greatest organisations of all time in the 70 years of the sport.
Yeah, if not for Formula One and motorsport, you could talk about any team in world sport as far as a dynasty is concerned. So, you look at the Golden State Warriors, Chicago Bulls in the in NBA, and then international teams, All Blacks even, who've been dominant, and then your football codes and all that. So yeah, it's one of those teams where you can hold them up in world sport as being a true dynasty. And we said this anyway last year when they won the constructors and the drivers title, that they're the first team in Formula One to, between two sets of regulations, actually win championships. So yeah, that's a true testament to how strong they are, not only on the driver front, but on a team front as well in all the different departments. And then you look at the change between when Paddy Lowe left and then when James Allison was brought in as well, it almost seems seamless. And if not, they've grown even stronger with that addition of Allison there. But anyway, more on that when we conclude the season. We can reflect on how good Mercedes has been as we have over the last 4 years anyway. So quickly going over the rest of the Grand Prix. So double points for Force India, 7th and 9th. Checo being the best of the rest, and in between them was Roman Grosjean and the Haas, and I guess only 1 point scorer for Haas because his teammate Kevin Magnussen had a DNF after a hit with Charles Leclerc early on in the race, which Leclerc and Sauber were not happy about, and a lot of people getting onto the anti-Magnussen bandwagon for his aggressive tactics. But then there's a lot of people who actually like his style of racing. It's aggressive, but not like a Pastor Maldonado style. Like, he is one of those old school type races, is Magnussen, where he puts everything on the line and he does get the job done.
He's abrasive, and that's the personality you do need. He's had some close calls this season, but you'd hope that, particularly with Grosjean on the improve, that he'll be able to round out his performance and just play his percentages a bit more clearly. And for Sauber, it was amusing hearing the quotes from Leclerc that he feels Magnussen is and always will be a nutcase, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And what about those quotes that were taken out of context as well about, Magnussen wants to die in an F1 car or something as well. So, yeah, he's one of those old school racers. I don't think that is supposed, we don't want that to happen or whatever those quotes were.
I think that was more metaphorical than saying he hopes to get killed behind the wheel.
But, it's great to see that sort of fiery personality in the car, but also in a talented driver too. He's not like he's some talentless hack who's actually talking big. He's actually got a lot of chops on him too, and we've seen quite a few good performances from him this season. Disappointing finish for Toro Rosso, I guess, despite qualifying in the top 10, given that it was Honda's home race. They had the upgrade and everything for the engine. Pierre Gasly unfortunately pipped right at the end of the race by Carlos Sainz for the final point, and then Brendan Hartley, he started his best qualifying of the season, but then just at the start lost all those positions and then didn't really recover, and he was just well outside the top 10. So yeah, disappointing, I guess, for them. But, still a lot of positives to take away for Toro Rosso and for Honda, crucially.
I think probably for Hartley, the way that he had that promise of Saturday and all that speculation, which continues about Toro Rosso, that it wouldn't have done him any favours when that chance was in the offing. And for Honda, after that bullish prediction coming in about making Q3, which they realised, it was probably a bit of a damn squib. overall for the team.
Yeah, because ultimately it's the points that pays the dollars at the end of the day, and if they didn't score any points, then it ultimately that's what the reflection is at the end of the season on where they finish in the championship. At least they would have taken a lot of satisfaction, Honda that is, that they were able to out-qualify McLaren, who barely made it out of Q1, or didn't even make it out of Q1, I think, with Alonso and Van Dorn. And I guess another messy race for Fernando Alonso. Some team radio messages that didn't actually get broadcast, talking about the penalty that he received for gaining an advantage over Lance Stroll, which was totally, I guess, unnecessary given where those two collided. It was at the chicane, and Alonso had no choice but to use that runoff, and in turn the stewards thought he gained an advantage, which I think he might have even slowed down to give that position back to Stroll. But, Stroll got a penalty for coming together with Alonso, but I guess giving Alonso the penalty for gaining an advantage was a bit unnecessary. And yeah, he came out and said shame on F1 and just totally rubbished the penalty. He kept going on and on about it even after the race.
At this point, he can't wait to get out of it all, and really he's probably clutching at straws. In the context, there wasn't much either of them fighting for, so it's just a shame to see that he's parting terms on such a bitter note, and you can only hope that he rediscovers that flair wherever his next endeavour might be.
Yeah, and I guess he'll be happy that this weekend he'll be back behind the wheel of a race-winning car, being still in Japan for the Fuji race in the World Endurance Championship. So, he's got that at least to keep his sanity. But yeah, only 4 F1 races left for him, I guess, in total, and McLaren just not really on the improve by the looks of it. It almost looks like they've given up on 2018 and they're looking forward to start 2019, and there's no real development coming on the parts. I mean, there's even talk about how their tyre selections are that, mundane, that it's almost like they don't really care about being aggressive or anything.
At this point, they've completed the minimum amount of races. They might as well just stay home and really put all resources towards the next season or 2021 whenever they've actually got a chance of getting on the climb again. And
you'd think as well, given that Force India had their points stripped from them when they returned at the Belgian Grand Prix, that, I think they're only like 13 or 14 points behind in the Constructors' Championship of McLaren. You'd think that given the way that Force India have been travelling, that they might even pip them to that position that McLaren are in currently. So that would be pretty disappointing for McLaren, who's had the whole season, to be beaten by a team that's only really been in there for half a season. So
no, they don't really deserve to be up there as it is. Force India, for what it was worth before they had to start from zero, that they've clearly had that consistency, so it's pretty easy to see them overhauling a few more if they keep up with the double car point hauls.
Exactly. So just some final thoughts quickly, and I guess we talked about this a lot over the weekend, and then there was some article that you showed me as well about it yesterday. It's just the questions that are going to be around Ferrari now and their form drop-off since the Belgian Grand Prix, and a lot of it perhaps to do with the untimely death of Sergio Marchionne, the fact that Ferrari is sort of rudderless at the moment. The new management are not really, they're taking a back seat with everything. Then you've got internal combustion between Arrivabene and Matteo Binotto as well, and it really is just like civil war at the moment in there, and there's no one really guiding the team at the track, and that's why they're sort of in the position that they are.
It seems as though without that central pillar in Marchionne, where things had really come on very strongly in the 4 years he was running the show, and almost overnight you thought it might have galvanised them, if anything, and for a point we thought maybe that was the case, but clearly since that mid-season break everything's gone to water, and everyone's got opposing ideologies, and all the power plays that were being speculated for a few years probably being staved off by Marchionne, they're all coming to bear now, and I think it's going to be a pretty tumultuous off-season, and who knows whether it leaves them better off or just even further gone into the future.
Yeah, well, until these things are addressed and someone comes in that can steer the ship, you'd think that they're going to the situation's going to go from bad to worse. I guess with Marchione, he came in not really, I guess a lot of people questioned whether he was committed to F1 or not, but he really steered them to where they were at the start of this year, being genuine championship contenders and having the best car. And I guess this is what he did with his iron fist, like he's done in pretty much everything that he put his hand to. So, not having a figure like that, I guess, they're back to, I guess, the rubble that they were in, when Luca de Montezemolo was at the end of his reign, and when Ferrari went through two team principals in the space of a year. So, there's going to be a lot of questions asked going forward, but for what it is this season, it's like I can't really see them winning another race at this stage. So, it's all on Mercedes and then maybe Red Bull to take one as well come Mexico.
And Vettel would have to be pretty close to analysing his options if this continues next season. He hasn't really got that much longer in his prime, so any alternatives there wouldn't be a surprise at all. Like Alonso's done and many other Ferrari drivers in the past, they find a way to escape the contracts when it's clear, probably in his 5th season, that he's given it enough of an attempt, and whether he's to blame partially, whether those pressures and the mistakes have been caused by Ferrari's own issues, whether he's had too much responsibility to bear, something will have to give at some point. Yeah,
his issues on track don't help either, really. Like, if he was able to get the job done and not have those errors and whatnot, then, it would have been a lot better. But then, you've got to contribute, you've got to proportion also what's going on internally, and also strategically all those bad calls that they've made. That's also got to be a factor in this. So, you win as a team, you lose as a team, and that's what you got to talk about with Ferrari, and you can talk about that with Mercedes as far as winning is concerned. So just quickly, drivers of the day, hard to go past another Red Bull driver for like the 10th consecutive race. Daniel Ricciardo this time doing the fight from the rear to 4th, and you said it, I said it, perhaps Mexico, an opportunity for him to win or even be on the podium for the last time for Red Bull.
Yeah, you'd hope so. Anytime he finishes, at the moment it seems as though he's putting in those driver of the day performances, but it seems as only about that's 2 or 3 times out of 10 almost statistically since Monaco. Such has been his misfortune. But overall, you'd probably have to say that Craig Lowndes would be the driver of the day when you're taking a bit more of a popular look at what the main attraction was on Sunday.
Oh yeah, we'll get straight into it then. The Bathurst 1000 recap, and Craig Lowndes, Stephen Richards again, putting on a masterclass, claiming their 7th and 5th victories respectively, and pair of legends again. They've become Bathurst immortals. Say what you want. Craig Lowndes within 2 wins now of Peter Brock's record of 9, and I guess it was a really special one this year for Lowndes and Richards, given that it's Lowndes' final season as a primary driver, as a full-time driver. Stephen Richards, his future up in the air as well, given that Triple Eight are scaling back to 2 cars next season, and Lowndes will be a co-driver for one of those guys. So, guys like Dumbrell and Richards, even Earl Bamber who's currently with Shane Van Gisbergen, will they be in that second seat, along being the second co-driver at that team next year? So, but overall, such a fascinating race weekend, starting off with wet practice sessions, and then we finally had some dry running on Friday for qualifying, and then Saturday top 10 shootout was so exciting. David Reynolds being on pole position, and Erebus just so strong all weekend, up until, that point in the race where we'll talk about in a second. There was heartbreak for them. We had Anton De Pasquale as well, qualifying 3rd in his first Bathurst shootout too. So, great start to the weekend for those guys.
It really shows you the way their development curve has been over the past 2 or 3 years since that switch to Holden, and the confidence with David Reynolds particularly, and probably that switch to 2 cars, having the reference points there really pays off for stuff like this. When you come to the Enduros, they've been a lot more consistent over the balance of the season, and obviously they've put a lot of work towards being right to go specifically for Bathurst, and they came so close to executing it almost flawlessly when you saw how strong they were Friday and Saturday, and for 85-90% of that race on Sunday. It's just the nature of of that circuit, it bites at some point, and at least they did see the finish line, but it wasn't the result that they wanted or deserved.
Yeah, and heartbreak it was for Reynolds and for Luke Youlden, but David Reynolds being in that car for the penultimate stint and suffering those severe leg cramps, while leading the race, and you think of those performances where they brave it out, they tough it out, and they see the checkered flag, but it just got to a point where it was so painful and severe that he had to be taken out of the car, that he was too fatigued and everything, and mentally he was absolutely exhausted and shattered. And Luke Youlden put on standby. They brought Reynolds in for the final pit stop. He elected to stay in the car, but that was, I guess, his downfall, because having not being able to feel his leg, it actually hit the pedal and spun the wheel in pit lane, which you're not allowed to do when the car's being serviced. So that gave them, after losing the position to Lowndes, who took over the lead, they got a pit lane penalty, which then put him down the order, and in the end, finishing I think it was like 13th or something, or 14th. It wouldn't have been the result that they hoped for. A podium could have still been on the cards if they had decided to put Youlden in the car earlier, when they initially found those problems for Reynolds. But you got to take your hat off to the guys, though, for the effort that they put in, and David Reynolds especially. You could see how much it means to him, how much it meant to him to win go back to back at Bathurst. I mean, we talked about them being in title contention early in the year, but since that dropped off, you could sense that their year, Erebus's year, was about going back to back at Bathurst, and it almost came off. But in the history books, it almost isn't enough. You've got to actually pull it off. And how fascinating would it have been if Reynolds, with those leg pains, actually pulled the job off? And back-to-back Bathurst victories would have been quite special.
Just gives more incentive to get it right next year, and they are consoled by last year's fairy tale success, and probably on the occasion, the way it worked out, they'd be at least very satisfied that if it wasn't them, that Craig Lowndes got to be on the top step, and there's plenty of time ahead for Reynolds. And the way Erebus does develop, they might really come around next year if they can get a all-season package firing right in that mix for outright title contention. Yeah,
it would be good to see for them too. And Reynolds just really matured as a race driver this season and has that confidence, as you can see. And it all starts with that shootout lap, I guess, on Saturday, to claim pole position and have that state that intention that they're going to go for the back-to-back and whatnot. And for young Anton De Pasquale as well, it was really good to see. And unfortunately, he had heartbreak too, because they had that crash on lap 140 at Reed Park. But during the day, they made mistakes earlier on. They were leading 1 and 2 Erebus in the opening stint, and then De Pasquale made a small mistake. Then there was a pit stop mistake as well for those guys. So a bit of finger trouble, but overall a solid effort from Erebus, and you'd hope that they'd come back stronger next year.
And for De Pasquale, first time out at Bathurst, he certainly kept himself pretty well acquitted and got the knowledge there that he needs just to move forward. And you can see it's been a pretty promising year for him, particularly for Erebus as well. Expanding to the multiple car operation, it's been successful.
They've been 2 cars for quite some time now, actually.
Who did they have before?
It was Dale Wood last year.
That's right. It's probably why I don't remember too well that they had the second car. There was a time, though, when they had the one.
No, they've always had 2 cars.
Well, in that case, only one of them's ever really been notable until this year, and giving it to a rookie. I think it's paid off.
Yeah, rookie of the year, easily, De Pasquale. But going back and looking at all the results anyway, so Scott Pye, Warren Luff embracing the podium for the second year in a row, having started a lowly 18th on the grid as well. So solid effort by the Walkinshaw team to get up there on the podium again. And I guess both guys lamenting that, they would have liked to have gone one better, but especially with a figure like Lowndes on the top step, they can't really complain. And hopefully next year they'll be be in that position to win the race. And, Walkinshaw, previously HRT, they have been strong every year. They've come to Bathurst over the past few years, and especially Warren Luff. I think this is his third podium in 4 years at this circuit. And then when you look back when he was with the Red Bull team with Craig Lowndes, they were on the podium in 2013 as well. So he's probably edging closer to a victory himself. He's about due now, given the success he's had here. But yeah, for Scott Pye, he's already a race winner this year, and I can totally see him one day being a Bathurst winner.
Just continues that upward curve since the loss of the factory support there, and who knows what the future holds for the joint collaboration. They're assessing the options, but they've got to be appealing to someone. If Chevrolet does want to get behind it with a Camaro package for 2020, these are the kind of results which will be appealing to all those major investors and shareholders. And
quickly as well, Zach Brown, I think he made a big mistake by missing out on this race to be at the Japanese Grand Prix, because what did McLaren do over the weekend, and what was the result that his team that he's invested in Walkinshaw achieved? So yeah, it would have been special if he was there this weekend. But they had Michael Andretti, of course, with Ryan Walkinshaw, so I'm sure they would have been quite pleased with that result, even if unfortunately the other car suffered a mechanical failure on lap 33, and a win eluded, or a chance for a podium eluded James Courtney and Jack Perkins once again.
Yes, and probably been a bit of a forgettable year for Courtney on the whole compared to what Pye has achieved. He's again left languishing and licking his wounds.
Yeah, exactly. And I said, at the time when Scott Pye was brought in, I said, it would have been better if they had Pye and Tander together at that team rather than Pye and Courtney. Even though Courtney's a former champion, I guess he really, next to Tander, probably Tander the preferred driver given his ability and everything. But yeah, that's here we are. Anyway, P3 on the podium, Scott McLaughlin and Alex Premer. So, crucial result as far as the championship is concerned as well, finishing ahead of Shane van Gisbergen to bring that gap back to 19 points. But yeah, important too, because this is Scott McLaughlin's first Bathurst podium. I mean, he's been in contention for so many years, and he's just either had retirements, DNFs, or not been on the podium, finished 5th or 6th. So yeah, a great result for him to finish on the podium too. And he said post-race there was some booing as well for the Ford drivers, and he had the Jim Richards moment where he feel like calling them a pack of arseholes or whatever, which I guess always is a funny little touch when you go onto that Bathurst podium and you do get booed for being a driver for the other manufacturer.
Just a good monkey off the back for McLaughlin there after some personal demons here over the course of his career, and then from the way they've slipped a bit in recent events, it'll just be something that can give them a bit of a leg to stand on into the final races there, if they've got any chance of overcoming Triple Eight, which has just grown stronger over the course of this season.
Yeah, exactly. And going to the next race in Gold Coast as well, it's a circuit that Van Gisbergen's been very strong at in the past, but also McLaughlin and Premer have been a formidable duo at that venue as well. They won there last year too. So it's going to be a crucial race, or a couple of races, at the Gold Coast, but getting that podium ahead of Van Gisbergen, who finished 5th or 6th, I think, in the end. It was quite crucial as far as the points were concerned. And I knew, and I said this last week when we did the preview, that, if neither of these two guys were going to be in a position to win the race, which early on they were, but as the race sort of panned out, it sort of became a bit more apparent that they weren't. It'd all be about trying to finish ahead of the other and to try and get those points in the championship. So for third, to get that podium as well was quite special for McLaughlin, but also, getting those championship points was quite crucial too.
And now keeping it out of the wall at Gold Coast, it's an entirely different beast again.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess there was chaos during Bathurst as always. We had friendly fire between the Tickford cars, the Mostert car and the Cam Waters car, which left the latter quite angry, you could say. But Mostert, I guess, sort of redeemed himself for Tickford being the leading contender and actually being an outsider for the win as well. And he finished 4th in the end, but still copped a bit of hate from, fans on social media, which I guess is completely uncalled for. It was, when you look at the move, it was contentious, but you could see David Russell really didn't help by not giving Mostert a lot of room to get through at the elbow. So, yeah, that's just sums up the season that outfit have had. Pretty rudderless, of course, and the times where they have been in contention and everything, it kind of gets overlooked because of all the poor performances.
Again, they'll be hoping, with particularly regards to Mark Winterbottom, to understand the car a lot better, and moving into the Mustang next year, hopefully have that one as a priority at this stage. And really, the last few years since that title for Winterbottom there, they've just been languishing, and for Mostert, he clearly is the future if he commits to the team, and those kind of results and the friendly fires we've seen a few times in probably the last year or two just shows that they need to probably get away from it all and look towards that future, and whether at the top step or just getting that consistency again. It's just been one of those years where they've just been far short of the mark far too frequently.
Yeah, without a win as well, you could say. You can almost compare them to how Yamaha have been this year in MotoGP, just having no direction at the moment, and just looking so far off being able to win a race. And I guess they jag a podium every now and again, but to not be in contention to win, which their squad, 2015 they won a championship, of course, with Winterbottom. It's just they need to get back in there as soon as possible, and next year with the Mustang, if that's what turns them around, then we'll have to wait and see. But I guess Bathurst always brings up those heartbreak narratives, and again for Jamie Whincup and Paul Dumbrell, they were cruelled by a tyre failure earlier in the race, but they bounced back to finish 10th again to score some points. But as far as the championship is concerned, 404 points adrift now. It's probably not really going to be a year where Whincup's going to win that 8th title, but between McLaughlin and Van Gisbergen still leads by 19 points. That margin really cut down now after McLaughlin's podium. So given that we've got 3 events to go and a total of 6 races, it's going to be quite interesting to see where it goes between the two Kiwis.
I think at this stage, if Van Gisbergen comes out with an extended lead after Gold Coast, just in terms of momentum, hard to see him surrender that lead. But for DJR-TP, at least they were a lot nearer to the mark this time out than they had been. Really going to Tailem Bend and even Sandown, they were just completely outclassed by Triple Eight. So if they get a victory or just another podium, you can see that it's just accumulating those minor placings. They can be pivotal rather than the outright victories. Yeah,
and Newcastle, given what happened last year, it's all going to be about surviving the chaos and whatnot. So, and I dare say when we get to Pukekohe next month as well for the home race for both McLaughlin and Van Gisbergen, it's going to go off there as well between the two Kiwis, and those two being in championship contention too. So that's going to be a round to look out for, which comes after the Gold Coast next weekend. But as it was, sad to say, but Bathurst really overshadowed F1 this weekend, and it's just one of those races where you look forward to all year, and now it's kind of unbelievable that it's already done and over with. When we look at it from a supercars point of view, it's the race we look forward to all year, and it's quite a significant weekend, and it's already done and dusted for another season. So we look forward to it next year again. And I guess for going back to Lowndes and Richards, Lowndes, his final stint as a full-time driver, he himself said that the win was it was a better win than 2006, which was quite an emotional win for him, given that it was straight after the passing of Brock himself. So, perhaps one of his most comfortable wins. But certainly one that is quite memorable.
Definitely wasn't the all-time classic Bathurst event, but it had the right outcome there, and probably the pressure was slightly off for Lowndes, knowing this was the last time as a full-time driver that he could just go out and soak it all up, and you saw that he probably really had an enjoyable weekend, and afterwards just a bit of relief just to know that he's going to get to be in a bit more of a relaxed mindset in the coming months. And he can always come back here, and if he's got that willingness to go around for a few years, there's every chance he'll break that record of, or at least equal, and who knows after that. But he's certainly chosen the right time to bow out on the full-time basis after what he went through 12 months ago. This is really a good way for him to sign off.
And for Richards as well, as a co-driver, he's won 5 Bathursts now, and he's 2 away from equaling his dad, Jim Richards. So for a driver of his capability, Stephen Richards, he's had a great stint and 2 wins now alongside Lowndes, and the first win will always be one of the most memorable for me personally because we were actually there to witness it. So you can always talk about that. It's like, we saw Lowndes and Richards win Bathurst together. So in the same way you could, if you were fortunate enough to see Brock back in the day do it. So, quite a significant weekend in that respect. But for Lowndes, who will he partner next year is the big question. Will it be Whincup or Van Gisbergen? You'd think that for the years to come, with that 888 car, he'll still be in contention.
Yeah, good problem for 888 to have, really, where they partner him with Whincup when they've had so much success in the past, or whether they want to go with Van Gisbergen, which would probably be quite a good combination. You imagine they'd complement each other quite nicely, so that's something they've got a bit of time to get their head around. And
yet again, I guess Whincup and Lowndes might want to have one last tilt together as well, given that Whincup might be looking at hanging up the supercars helmet as well in a couple of years' time, given that he's already achieved everything there is. He's won 4 Bathursts, he's 7 titles, over 100 races, so what if he gets to notch one up with his old mate Landsey as well? So that'll be quite significant to see too.
Absolutely, yeah. For now, I guess they got get the attention back to what's ahead for the title battle.
Yeah, title battle indeed. So quickly, let's wrap things up. We haven't done this for a couple of weeks because we talked a lot about footy, I guess. But sporting moments of the week, I guess we're in a bit of a transitional stage now. Between I guess winter and summer, football and cricket, I guess. So cricket will be the focus of a lot of sports moving forward. And for me, I guess even though we've got the test match going on in the UAE between Australia and Pakistan, we've got the domestic one-day comp that wrapped up here in Victoria, getting the job done. So good on the Vics over the Tasmanians the other day. So that was certainly a highlight. And I guess for me, it'll probably be more about domestic cricket this season that I'll be looking forward to watch rather than the international and the test series. Yeah, the Big Bash is always great, and Sheffield Shield is always quite interesting to keep an eye on too, just to look at those future stars for Australia for the test team.
And we'll have some increased presence between Fox Cricket and hopefully with Channel 7 increasing that output, you could say, to hopefully beyond the international scene and really get an insight into what's going on that domestic level, where you could argue after what went on last season, the way it concluded on quite an acrimonious note with the scandal with the ball tampering, that it can regain some of its shine as they head towards the World Cup and the Ashes in the next 12 months.
Yeah, exactly. So, plenty to look forward to, I guess, if not just the warmer weather and a lot more daylight as well into the evening. So, as far as that's all concerned, thanks for tuning in this week. We'll be back next week to have a look at big weekend again with Gold Coast. We've got Texas Grand Prix. We've got also MotoGP coming to Phillip Island too, so that'll be worth having a bit of a talk about too. But other than that, I wish you best of luck this weekend for the Melbourne Marathon as well, of course. We'll talk about your result next week, and I'll be glad to actually finally be in the crowd this time as well, after like 5 years or whatever of having work on Sundays and now being free of that burden. So hopefully, given the conditions and a new set of rubber for yourself as well, that you'll actually be able to reach the record that you want to.
And bring on the satisfaction afterwards. It'll all be worth it for some probably looked forward to celebrating. I think being patient in the meantime, especially with the way the weather's been, it's hard to hold off, but it'll all be worthwhile come Sunday afternoon and beyond.
Yeah, let the celebrations kick in, but before we've got to do the hard work. So, from us both, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
Till then.